Well, good day, everybody. Sorry it's taking me a little while to get back to you on my story, but life just gets in the way. But I've just been seeming to work more than I want to. My ladybug, she had to show up. She's so beautiful. Ain't she so beautiful? Anyways, I figured we'd do a little hit and miss on a few subjects, like the dairy. Not much happened there. It was one of those things where you got up, you went to the dairy. Sometimes I was herdsman. They'd bring the herd in for the milkers. Sometimes I'd have to fill in for the milkers. Um, Most of the time I spent was in the pasteurizing room, pulling heavy cream, doing the pasteurization of the milk, cleaning, a lot of cleaning. Um, well, not really much happened in the dairy. There's a few highlighted moments. Um, Not really sure on, but we had these big vats, huge, and we that's where the milk went into after we pulled the heavy cream, and it was all open. Had these big stainless steel lids that you put on, you know, because you had to get in there and clean them. And it may sound a little funny, but in my previous stories, I told you about Miss Cameltoe there. Um, I let her bathe in the milk, not with soap or nothing, but just swim around the milk vat. Yeah. It was a little chilly, but it was great. I mean, it was, the properties of milk. I mean, especially when there's a lot of fat in it. Um, it's just so soothing on the skin, and it, you know, it does things. It relaxes and makes you feel good. Anyways, um, there was a few times where there was nobody at the dairy but me, and she'd come down and first time I told her about it, she looked at me like I would lost my mind, you know. But um, I grabbed the ladder and set it up on the thing. Told her climb on in. Take your clothes off, climb on in, and it was. Yeah, it was. She loved it, anyways. I loved watching her too. I mean, we never got in and did anything like that. And we always took a shower before we climbed in. But you know, it was about one of the only exciting things that happened down at the dairy. Really, I mean, other than milking cows, get cows going into labor, having baby cows, you know, things like that. You know, I'm not sure if I ever told you about the my pit bull, but he was a big old guy. I missed him, but that's pretty much all the dairy was about. You know, and slaughterhouse was pretty much just like the dairy. You know, wasn't really much to go on about there. Cows come in. Hit them in the head. Hook them, hang them, skin them, gut them. You know, take the stuff out of uh, the animal that was we were used for edible. liver, heart, kidneys, and this hang them. But there was one guy. He was a weird duck. Uh, Blonde-haired guy. I think he was German. He was probably in about his mid 30s. But every time a male cow came in, he would cut the penis part out of it because then he'd stretch it, let it harden, and he'd make canes, walking sticks out of it, canes. And he sold those for pretty good money. That was kind of a little gross for me, but hey, and you know, then other parts of the animal, were delicacies to other people. Not something I never tried them. Never had the guts to try, you know, Rocky Mountain oysters. But there's some of the crew that they want. That's what they were big on that. You know, and then there was the chickens and the turkeys that came in, and man, that was the stinkiest time. I mean, to this day, I won't eat turkey or chicken. I won't eat fowl. I mean, I can't do it. I mean, I can if it's I can do grouse, quail, wild wild animals. You know, wild turkeys. But I can't do chickens. Can't do turkey. Not store bought. That stench is stay with me for the rest of my life. But I don't miss it. And then the hogs come in. A lot of people were kind of funny about the hogs too. Uh, they're actually pretty clean. I mean, we'd always hose them off really good. Put them in the chute. If I think that show No Country for Old Men, that guy walked around with that tank. That's what we used to put the animals down with. Um, it was it was humane. You know, Whack, down they go. They go into their death throes. And when they calm down, you hook them up, drop them into hot boiling water. You know, pull the skin off. Very little of the pig ever really went to waste. Mostly just the intestines, um, and the lungs. Pretty much everything else was saved. I mean, I never nothing. Well, I did try it, but it was it was absolutely disgusting. It tastes like I was eating out of a dirty frying pan, a cast iron frying pan. Throw out into the wood, into the yard for about 2 weeks. Let it get all rusty and crunchy and whatnot. Then bring it in and fry your food with it. That's what pig brains taste like to me, right? But the ears and feet, uh, there was kind of a demand for the feet, but that was what we fed our dogs. We give them the legs of the cows and some of the feet of the pigs, unless they're, like if the pig's feet were the ankle part of it was big and thick, then those were sold. And then you had some people, they wanted the whole head. Some people just wanted the jowls. Some people wanted the brains. Like I said, that stuff. And some people even wanted the balls too. I mean, I don't know if they'd be called Rocky Mountain oysters or what they call those, but there's and some people were, as far as I was concerned, just downright disgusting, man. I mean, we'd hang that hog and we'd slit his throat, and they jump over that fence and they start filling cups with the blood and just drinking the blood. I mean, this couldn't believe it, man. But I mean, hey, it wasn't. They weren't breaking any rules, so um, it happened. You probably see smoke, but right now, this time of year in Hawaii, the mosquitoes are so bad. We've had uh, just about nonstop 2 weeks of rain, and um, so the mosquitoes are just going nuts. But so the smoke keeps them away. And anyways, so then you got then let's see, I'm not sure if I want if this gas station or the garbage route. The garbage route was cool. Me and Grandpa just about did that all the time. That was me and Grandpa's job. Um, because, like I said, Grandpa liked to drink, and um, usually about once a week, I'd stop by on the way home. Uh, Grandpa could go down and buy his own whiskey, but um, if Grandma heard about it, man, it was bad. I mean, she freaked out, you know. But so Grandpa always had me do it. Just write a note, um, when I got a little older, and um, if I wanted something, usually it was Jack Daniels mostly, Johnny Walker um, sometimes, but that was about that was about all I ever drank. Other than beer. Beer was for we need it was socializing. And um, Miss Cameltoe, she liked to drink her wine, but she always bought her own. So that was usually the beginning of the garbage route. I'd get the whiskey and whatnot, and then me and Grandpa would go drive around the garbage route, we'd, in the car, and at certain stops along the garbage route way, he'd stash a bottle of whiskey, and we'd do this for the route, and so when we do our garbage route, Grandpa we'd hit to one of these stops. He'd get out a little bit down the throat and dump the garbage, and off we go. And we go to the next stop. And he didn't do it at every one. He probably every 5 to 10 cans. He'd have his own little stash of. And so usually by the time we got through with the garbage route, Grandpa was pretty well smashed. I mean, he wasn't to the point where I'd never seen him so drunk that he couldn't walk. He'd be pretty tipsy, but it'd never be to the point where he couldn't fully function, and we'd go, by the time we get to the end of the route, I'm doing emptying the garbage truck, but pretty much washing it and emptying it. He's standing out there usually bullshitting with me, probably, sipping on some coffee and whiskey, that was the way he liked it. He liked to drink. We'd bring a thermos of coffee, and he'd start off with 2/3 of a cup of coffee, and then a third of whiskey. And by the end of the route, it was about half and half. It was kind of funny. Christmas time, the folks around there would leave you know, when you pop the lid off, here's a bottle of whiskey in the garbage can for Grandpa. And usually around Christmas time, he'd probably get anywhere from 2 to 3 cases of whiskey as a tip for the garbage route. Um, so, and it never went to waste. Believe you me, Grandpa never wasted a drop of that. And it was pretty uneventful, most of the time. We always carried a gas can and a battery. Because like I told you, we'd go to the dump and there'd be a car down there or something. And, we if it started up and ran, you know, we brought it to the junkyard. You know, mostly, the dump was closer to the house. So we'd get it to the house and then, I'd come down with the tow truck or I'd drive it to the wrecking yard and park it in back and then take something else home. You know, one of the cars I was working on, whatnot. And that's where I got a lot of my beaters, you know. Um, and then sometimes it was, people show up, uh, they got cars in their yard that they wanted, to get rid of. Um, this old boy came over one day, and I don't know, he had a real heavy accent, Swedish, I think. I don't know why I want to say that. But, anyways, he had like 15 Renaults, you know. And those old Renaults, they kind of reminded me of the old round Volvos. Um, and so I went down and I gathered, brought them all up to the wrecking yard. And um, there, there were some that motors were bad. Some of them were rusted out pretty bad. But we put together, me, Johnny G, and Blank, and High Pockets. We put together about 4 or 5 of them that run really good and are nice and straight, and we use those. We go the road that to the wrecking yard. It went past the wrecking yard, but you couldn't go up it because we had it gated off. Too many people had come back through that way, tried to get into the wrecking yard. Um, and we had it gated off far enough to where it was, about a mile walk to the wrecking yard. And we'd, times are dead, things are slow. Sunday, we'd jump in the cars and we'd take off up the mountain. And they had these big, I don't know, plains, fields, saddles, stuff like that. And we built little racetracks around them. And we'd race the little Renaults around there, and then they get starting to get trashed, so then we'd have our own little demolition derby, crash them into each other and whatnot, until they were pretty much, they couldn't move no more. And we'd drag them back down to the wrecking yard and we'd take all the parts off that one and fix up one that had a better body and start over again. And so that was kind of a cool little adventure. I mean, those little Renaults were cool. Little 3-lug wheels. I don't even know what year they were. Little 3-cylinder, 3 lugs. They were just fun little cars, tooling around in. I really wish I would have been able to keep one of them. I did for the longest time because the one that the guy was restoring, that's why he had all these cars. He was trying to restore one, and it was like a powder blue, real, real beautiful little car. It was cool. And so I kept that one, and I fixed it all up. You know, you can't do much with a, you know, it wasn't like you get a set of mag wheels for that fucker. You know, I mean, we could have probably made an adapter for the wheels, but you know, these. I mean, top speed in these things were 45 miles an hour, and you had to be kind of brave. You know, I don't think they were intended for highway use. They're probably intended for just running around town. You know, but they were pretty cool. I saved one of them for a long time. And then the gas station, that was kind of weird. Now I think back on it now, you know, I mean, now we call them cougars, you know, and for being a small community like we were, not really, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people scattered over a large area, you know, a lot of farms, you know, stuff like that, you know, little towns, little, you know, but but the amount of cougars back then, you know, was pretty much astounding. I mean, I bet you if I was, I don't know, if I wasn't so picky on the women, I probably could have got laid every night by a different one. You know, pretty much the only rule I had was, you know, if you were married, you know, I wasn't going to do that. But most of the women, you know, back in the day, like I said, you know, I mean, they're beautiful. You know, their bodies were all nice, tight, and firm. You know, hands may be a little rough because they worked. You know, and but they had all the right junk in all the right places, and a lot of them were kind of concerned about their reputations too. So everything, you know, all, all the ones I did take up on their offer, I didn't have to ask them. They always, you know, they always asked me pretty much, you know. They'd hint really, really good. And, you know, and I'd get the hint and I'd tell them, yeah, you know, well, we can get together. We can do something, you know. And most of the time it was in the barn, you know, behind the house because they didn't want to be seen, you know, screwing a young kid, you know. So, or having to explain while, you know, they were together, you know. So, but I got quite a few nice pieces of butt there, I'll tell you. That was something that at the time I didn't think nothing of it, but now, after, you know, all these years, you know, I think, man, I mean, some of the women that were coming in there were just absolutely beautiful. And I mean, from redheads to blondes to brunette to Mexican women to Italian women, oh, quite a few Indian women, and I was always partial to the Mexican ones. There's something about a dark haired, dark eyed woman, you know. That always just like wow, you know. I mean, that especially when they're, you know, yeah, there was a lot of them. Um, but I never had to hunt for it. You know, it was right there, ready to, you know, and it was. I'd probably been. I think you know, I think it was right after Miss Camel Toe, so that'd be about just before I turned 17. Grandpa noticed the amount of uh, gas being sold um, was increased quite a bit. Um, it started when I was about 15, and all these, you know, women. I mean, I'm not talking grandmas, I mean, I'm talking, between late 20s, you know, early 40s, you know, and they'd come in and Grandpa got on me a couple times about too much, you know, spending too much time with one customer, because they'd come in, especially on nights when I was working, they'd come in and they'd want to talk, and um, but if they saw me talking to a, another woman, then it was, kind of all about business, um, and some of them were, I don't know, I don't know the best way to put it. They were just brazen. It'd be probably a good word for it. Um, they, how much time you got? Well, working. You got time to, maybe go into the office for a little while. No, I can't do that. I'd like to, but I mean, I, you know, I gotta wait. There's nobody else here. It's just me. So I'd really like to, take you in the back and, a little exploratory surgery there, you know. But um, it was it was crazy. And then we had fucking Tom. Guy wanted to be a mechanic so bad. That poor bastard. Um, and we had these old split rim tires, you know, big semi trucks and the Fords and Chevys and Dodges, the big tires that they'd put on them, the loggers mostly, um, had those damn split rims, and those things were straight up dangerous. You know, if you didn't, if you weren't, if you didn't take the right precautions, you could easily end up dead. That ring come flying off of there, it'd take a head off, lose an arm. That dumb bastard Tom cost him 3 fingers. Because we had this big long air thing that we'd clip on the valve stem, so you could be, you know, way over to the air inlet. Then you can just throw the air pressure to it and blow it up, and then you leave it. You know, you want to leave it for at least 5-10 minutes. Just in case it took. Sometimes it was scared the shit out of me a few times. Here I thought I had it all sealed, and I waited the right amount of time and started to lift the lift off the tire, and that thing come off of there, whang, wrap around the lift, make a hell of a racket. And I'm sitting there thinking, I did everything right. What the hell happened? But it, but old Tom, man, he didn't use our valve stem tool. Instead, he's over there, trying to put air in the tire. And when that ring came off, it didn't. He had put it underneath the lift, like he seen me do it. But I always centered that ring, so when it was underneath the lift was like this. That ring, that valve stem was straight, right there. So the lift was holding it down. It couldn't go anywhere. And but he never paid attention to that, and he wasn't supposed to do it. That's why nobody ever showed him how to do it. Because he was just he was just a meathead. I mean, anyways, he had that valve stem over there. He figured he'd be safe putting the thing on there, and he had the air hose going, and he goes over there and sticks that thing on there. Well, he couldn't get it to seat right, and instead of going turning the air off like he should have, he kept messing with it and holding it on there. And when that ring came off of there, it took his 3 fingers right off his hand, because those were right over the ring that he had the ring kind of clocked wrong. So instead of it being in the middle like it should have been, he had it off to one side. So when that thing came off that rim, it took these 3 fingers right off, and it was a bloody mess. So he wasn't allowed to work at the station no more. I think Grandpa, we put him down at the dairy. We let him clean stalls because that was something that had to be done. Go back in the stall with the tractor, drop the blade, drag it out. And then you go to the next stall. And when you get all these stalls cleaned out, you got a big old row. Then you take the bucket and just go right on down. Clean the whole stalls out. Dump it into the. We had this. I don't know. Best way to put it would be big old concrete. I think it was like 8 feet high on the sides, probably pretty close to 20 feet long, and big open thing, 3-sided. And we just scoot all the manure and hay and whatnot into that. And so we, there was almost no way he could screw it up. Even though he did manage to dump the tractor into the pit a few times, cover himself with shit. That was funnier than hell, But yeah, buried that tractor right into that fucking pile. Couldn't believe it. Man, I was laughing so damn hard. Grandpa was trying to scold me, but he couldn't keep a straight face either. Yeah. Tom took a shit bath. But anyways, so that was kind of, I mean, we had the lift, it failed one time. Nobody got hurt, thank God. Not even the car. It just, the hydraulics line blew, and that dropped that lift like a sack of shit, like boom, car bouncing on it, shit. So then we'd have to get the inspector in and have to replace a whole bunch of lines, because if one failed, there's may or may not others fail, so it wasn't that big a deal to replace the lines. It was just, it was just a hassle, and then you had to clean up because all the hydraulic oil. I think that's why they outlawed those things. So, anyways, that that about covers the rest of places that I worked at for Grandpa, and I got a few crazy stories to tell. I'm gonna have to put a little bit more thought into them because I want to try to get them right. So, anyways, thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoy my videos of my memories, and may God bless you. You have a good day.